For 10,000 cycles, the Galactic Council governed a peaceful, orderly cosmos. Their laws were clear. New species, upon achieving faster-than-light travel, were to be welcomed with gentle guidance into a unified, harmonious community. War was a forgotten relic, defense a matter of elegant energy shields and diplomatic accords. The counselors from the aquatic Selka to the crystalline Narration believed they had perfected galactic society. Then, humanity arrived, not with a humble probe or a desperate distress call, but by tearing a hole in the fabric of space itself at the edge of the Seraphina Nebula. The silent, monstrous shape that emerged from the rift was like nothing in the stellar archives. It was not a ship. It was a jagged mountain of blackened alloy and radiating weapon ports, scarred by micro-impacts and stained with the faint residue of atomic fire. It moved not with graceful anti-gravity, but with the brute, tectonic thrust of contained plasma explosions. Its name, etched in angular script on its flank, translated to a single, chilling concept: unbreakable. This was not a civilization seeking fellowship. This was a species that had looked into the void, found it wanting, and decided to armor the heavens. And as the Titan's long-range scanners passively swept the Council's pristine, gleaming fleets, a primal, atavistic fear, a emotion the database had no name for, spread through the command decks. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council panicked. They were not looking at a new member. They were looking at their own obsolescence, forged in steel and wrath. The observation outpost at the rim of the Seraphina Nebula was a place of quiet contemplation. From its crystal viewports, Ambassador Kalen of the Rin would watch the stellar nurseries give birth to stars, their light playing across his multifaceted form in soothing patterns. Peace was not just a policy here. It was the very environment. His aide, a slender Selka named Alara, floated in her nutrient tank, her frills pulsing with calm cyan light as she monitored the passive sensor arrays. Their duty was ceremonial, a watch for a future that the Council's models predicted would not come for another 500 cycles. The anticipated FDL emergence of the sentient species from Sector 17G, known locally as Sol. The alarm was not a blare, but a soft, urgent chime that violated the ambient harmony. Alara's frills flushed a sudden, alarmed crimson. Ambassador, a massive spatial distortion. Bearing 027 by ecliptic north. It is wrong. Kalen turned, his crystal body refracting the nebula's light into frantic rainbows. A stellar vent? A quantum filament collapse? Negative. The energy signature is artificial, but it does not match any known drive technology. The distortion is violent. It is tearing, not folding. Her voice, usually a fluid whisper, was tight. On the main viewer, the placid starfield rippled. Space itself seemed to flinch, then split. A jagged wound of lightning and non-light erupted, silent in the vacuum but screaming across every sensor. From the rupture, it emerged. Kalen's logical mind stalled. Council ships were things of beauty. Smooth curves, gleaming alloy, graceful lines that spoke of advanced materials science and harmony with physical laws. This was an atrocity against that philosophy. It was all harsh angles and reinforced plate, a kilometers-long slab of blackened metal pitted with craters and streaked with radiation burns. It had no elegant symmetry. It was a brutalist fortress with giant, crude thrusters glowing with the dull fury of contained suns at its stern. Arrays of what could only be projectile weapon ports, a technology abandoned by the galaxy for millennia, studded its surface like the spines of a dead world's most vicious predator. By the first song, Alara breathed. Its mass, it exceeds the Council's flagship tenfold. And its power output. Those are primitive fusion signatures, but on a scale they are wasteful, channeling enough energy to power a city into mere propulsion. The ship, the Unbreakable, completed its translation. The rift sealed behind it with a final flicker of tortured physics. It hung there, dark and silent. Its scanners, powerful enough to be detected as active LiDAR pulses, swept over the outpost, and the two small, pearl-like Council patrol vessels that had drifted closer in stunned curiosity. The pulse was not a polite request for data. It was a tactile, penetrating measure, feeling every contour, probing every shield frequency. On the patrol vessel Grace of Ilos, Captain Vreen, a stout Baralan, felt his hide prickle. His ship's defensive systems chirped a passive, automated analysis. The translation scrolled on a screen, a dry, technical assessment that felt like a death sentence. Primary armament. Estimated mass driver batteries, caliber exceeding any logged standard. Secondary armament. Directed energy weapons, probable nuclear-pumped X-ray laser design. Defensive systems, multi-layered physical armor plating, average thickness 50 meters. Supplemental, point defense network utilizing hypervelocity kinetic interceptors. Hull composition, ferrotitanium alloy, composite ceramic weave, evidence of self-repair nanomatrix. Overall design philosophy, extreme durability and independent operational capacity. Tactical assessment. Vessel is not optimized for diplomatic or commercial functions. Vessel is a dedicated, strategic-level weapons platform. A weapons platform. The term was archaic. Ships were for travel, for communication, for showing the flag. Weapons platform spoke of a mindset the Council had buried in prehistory. A weak, static-laden signal arrived from the Titan on a standard first contact frequency, but modulated with a raw power that bordered on aggression. The screen resolved into a figure. Not a slender, elegant being, but a bipedal mammal, clad in a form-fitting uniform of dark blue. Its skin was pale, its face lined not with age, but with what looked like strain and perpetual vigilance. Its eyes were the most unsettling feature. Two forward-facing orbs that held no shimmer of bioluminescence, only a flat, assessing focus. Unknown vessels. The human's voice was a low gravel, devoid of musical tonality. This is Fleet Admiral James Thorne of the Terran Sol Defense Fleet, commanding the TSF Unbreakable. Identify yourselves and your governing authority. Kalen, his diplomatic protocols overriding his dread, opened a channel. Admiral Thorne, I am Ambassador Kalen of the Galactic Council. You have arrived at a designated peaceful observation zone. On behalf of the Council, I welcome you. Your method of arrival is unexpected. Your vessel is unique. On the bridge of the Unbreakable, Thorne watched the alien ambassador, his expression unreadable. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency in the red-tinged light of the command center. He had seen the scans of the alien ships. They were beautiful, fragile things, like glass seashells next to a hammer. Unexpected and unique are words, Ambassador, Thorne replied, his tone even. We are here to establish diplomatic relations. We have been listening to your broad-spectrum broadcasts for a decade. We know of your council. We request coordinates and clearance to approach your core systems for formal introductions. In the council chambers, light years away, the signal was relayed. The panic was not immediate. First came confusion, then disbelief. The Celcom minister's frills lay flat against her body in a sign of distress. The Baralan defense coordinator snorted, his trunk twitching. They listened for a decade and said nothing, and then they built that. He gestured at the hologram of the Unbreakable, which dominated the serene chamber like a gargoyle. This is not a first contact vessel. This is a declaration. They are announcing they will not be shepherded. The Rin Archcounselor, his facets dim, spoke the fear aloud. They did not come in a ship of peace. They came a castle of war. They looked at a galaxy singing songs of unity, and their first thought was to bring a shield and a sword. Why? What history forged such a mindset? The order was sent to Kalen. Stall them. Assess them. Do not, under any circumstance, allow that vessel near the core worlds. Panic was a quiet, cold thing, seeping into the Council's decisions. They had no frame of reference, no protocol for a species whose hello was a clenched fist. Ambassador Kalen's orders were a delicate dance of obstruction wrapped in velvet courtesy. Admiral Thorne, he transmitted, his voice a model of harmonic diplomacy. The core systems are a place of profound cultural and ecological sensitivity. The arrival of such a substantial vessel, with its unique energy signatures, could cause unforeseen disturbances. We propose an interim meeting at the Neutral Way Station Theta 7. It is a magnificent facility, capable of accommodating your shuttlecraft. On the Unbreakables bridge, Commander Alistair Vance, Thorne's tactical officer, smirked. Ecological sensitivity. Sir, their long-range scans are painting us every 3 seconds. They're terrified of the guns. Thorne didn't smile. He understood fear. It was a reliable constant. They see a predator. We need them to see a partner. But we don't hide our teeth to make friends. That's how you get bitten. He opened a channel. Ambassador Kalen, we appreciate the concern. However, the Unbreakable is a fully self-sufficient diplomatic envoy. Our unique energy signatures are contained. We will proceed to the coordinates of your primary governance world at 1/4 thrust. Our estimated arrival is in 72 hours. You are welcome to escort us. The message was polite, absolute, and left no room for negotiation. It was not a request. It was a timetable. On the Council patrol ships, nervous energy spiked. They had never been given orders to block someone. To escalate, yes. Dissuade often. But physically impede another sovereign vessel? It was unthinkable. The Baralan Defense Coordinator, gritting his tusks, authorized a demonstration of concord. A full wing of the Council's most advanced peacekeeping vessels, 20 sleek, silver ships known as harmonizers, would intercept the Unbreakable en route. Their plan, to activate their combined energy shielding, creating a shimmering, iridescent wall of light across the Titan's path, a barrier of pure, harmless energy meant to symbolically and physically halt its advance. It was a beautiful, non-violent show of collective resolve. When the Harmonizer wing deployed, it was a breathtaking spectacle. Their shields interlinked, forming a vast, opalescent web that stretched across 1,000,000 kilometers of space, glittering with refracted starlight. Their commander hailed the Unbreakable. Terran vessel, please heave to. This barrier is a symbol of our unity and our laws. We cannot permit an unscheduled entry. Please alter your course for Way Station Theta 7. On the Unbreakable, the crew watched the display. It's pretty, a sensor officer remarked. Effective kinetic energy dispersion is less than 2%, Vance recited from his screen. The barrier is designed for energy weapon mitigation and visual deterrence. It's a stage curtain. Thorne studied the magnificent, feudal wall. They're trying to box a glacier in silk. He gave a quiet order. Maintain course and speed. Activate forward deflectors to standard navigation grade. Do not power weapons. Do not alter shielding frequency. The Unbreakable did not slow. It did not change its heading by a single degree. It continued its ponderous, tectonic advance toward the glittering barrier. The Harmonizer commander's calls became more urgent, then confused. The Titan hit the shield wall. There was no catastrophic explosion, no fiery breach. There was a brilliant, silent flare of light as the immensely powerful but elegantly tuned energy matrix strained against an object it was never designed to stop. Sheer, unimaginable mass driven by primitive, unstoppable thrust. The shield shimmered, stretched, and then, like a soap bubble poked by a stone, it popped. The harmonic feedback surged back through the linked harmonizers, overloading their delicate systems. Their ships were not damaged, but utterly humiliated. Lights flickered out, engines temporarily died, and they drifted powerless, their beautiful formation shattered, as the monolithic shadow of the Unbreakable passed over them, utterly unscathed, without even a shudder in its inertial dampeners. In the council chamber, the panic ceased to be quiet. It just ignored them, the Celcom minister cried. Our strongest collective shield, and it was less than a cobweb to that thing. The Durin Archcounselor focused on the sensor data from the event. Not ignored. It calculated. It knew the shield would fail before it engaged. Their understanding of physics is applied differently. We seek harmony with forces. They seek dominion over them. The Baralan was now truly alarmed. If they will not stop for a symbol, what will they stop for? We have no weapons to threaten them. Our entire defense philosophy is based on deterrence and de-escalation. Admiral Thorne's next transmission was calm, but it landed like a hammer. Ambassador Kalen, your escort seems to have experienced technical difficulties. We have rendered no hostile action. We continue on our stated course. We suggest you use the next 60 hours to prepare a suitable docking location. The Unbreakable requires a deep space anchorage, not a planetary berth. We await your coordinates. The message was clear. Your tricks are childish. We are coming. Deal with it. For the Council, the crisis was no longer about protocol. It was about existential relevance. Their entire civilization, built on the premise that advanced species naturally evolved beyond brute force, was being confronted by a paradox. A technologically capable species that had chosen the path of the fortress. Why had humanity, hearing the galaxy's song of peace, composed a symphony of armor? The panic evolved into a desperate need to understand. They scrambled their historians, their xenopsychologists, and directed every deep-range sensor and archival algorithm toward the one thing they had politely ignored during their decade of listening: the content of humanity's own broadcasts, not just the fact of them. They had monitored carrier waves, not stories. Now, they began to translate, to analyze the data streams of human history and culture they had passively recorded. What they found, in those final hours before the Titan's arrival, did not calm their panic. It gave it a name and a profound, chilling depth. The data stream translation hit the Council chambers like a psychic shockwave. Their AIs, designed for parsing scientific and harmonious cultural data, struggled to contextualize the violent, contradictory torrent of human history. The analysts presented their findings with a tone of dawning horror. It is not a single narrative, reported the lead Ren linguist, his facets pulsing a distressed gray. It is a cacophony of conflict, a fractal pattern of war and recovery reaching back to their pre-industrial age. They have divided their own world into competing nations for millennia. Their technological leaps are often coincident with global conflicts of staggering brutality. Holograms flickered in the chamber, grainy images of primitive trenches and exploding shells, then later the blinding fireballs of fission weapons over cities, then the sleek horrors of orbital kinetic strikes and plasma bombardments from their pre-FDL unification wars. The scale of self-inflicted violence was incomprehensible. Their biology is relevant, a Selkaz xenobiologist added, her frills trembling. They are paradoxically fragile and resilient. They lack natural armor, significant claws, or venom. Their homeostasis is easily disrupted. Yet, their medical history shows they deliberately introduce weakened versions of lethal pathogens into their own bodies to build resistance. They call it vaccination. They attack themselves to become stronger. It is a mindset that permeates their society. The Baralan defense coordinator stared at an image of a human soldier from some ancient conflict, mud-smeared and exhausted but still holding a weapon. They are not predators by nature. They are persecutors. They turn their environment, their own biology, even the principles of physics, into weapons. They see a mountain and think fortress. They see an atom and think bomb. They looked into the void, and so what? An enemy. The most chilling revelation came from the analysis of their popular media. The stories humans told themselves were not parables of peace and unity, but epic sagas of survival against monstrous odds, of heroes defined by sacrifice in the face of apocalyptic threats. Stories where entire planets could be destroyed, where enemies were often not understood, but fought. The Council had no archetype for this. Their myths were of creation songs and philosophical awakenings. The Titan-class ship, the Ren Arch-Counselor said, his voice hollow, is not an aberration. It is a logical conclusion. For us, a ship is a means to explore and connect. For them, based on this history, Every voyage is a potential battle. Every first contact is a potential threat. The Unbreakable is not a warship because they expected war with us. It is a warship because their entire experience of existence has taught them that survival is not guaranteed by treaties or goodwill, but by the capacity to endure and retaliate. They built it not to attack the galaxy, but to survive it. It is a lifeboat forged from battleship armor. This understanding transformed the panic. It was no longer just fear of a powerful weapon. It was the terrifying realization that they were dealing with a species with a completely different, almost incomprehensible definition of reasonable and safe. How do you negotiate with someone whose baseline security requires a planet-killing gun at their back? As this symposium of dread concluded, the Unbreakable arrived at the outskirts of the core system. It did not enter with a flashy show of power. It simply was there, a stark, black geometric stain against the carefully orchestrated stellar traffic of glittering yachts and smooth transports. All civilian traffic froze. The system-wide harmony music, played on subspace frequencies, faltered into silence. Admiral Thorne's final approach message was characteristically blunt. Galactic Council, we are holding at the fringe of your system as a courtesy. We request docking coordinates and an invitation for face-to-face dialogue. We are here to talk. The Council was paralyzed. Letting that vessel closer felt like allowing a live explosive into their sanctum. But refusing now, after the humiliation of the harmonizers and with the Titans sitting at their doorstep, would be a catastrophic provocation to a psychology they were just beginning to fear they understood. It was the ancient, reptilian SS Keth philosopher, rarely heard from, who hissed a solution. We cannot judge the storm by the fortress it built. We must judge the storm by its keeper. Invite the keeper, not to our chamber, to a place of vulnerability. Let them send their leader to us, alone, in one of our own shuttles. Let them stand in our space, unarmored. See what they are when not encased in a kilometer of steel and terror. The proposal was audacious, risky, and the only path that didn't lead to immediate humiliation or conflict. The invitation was sent, Admiral Thorne. As a gesture of mutual trust, we invite you, personally, to the Council orbital. Come in a Council shuttle. Leave your vessel. Let's meet as minds, not as monuments. On the Unbreakable, Commander Vance was appalled. Sir, it's a trap, or a test designed to make you look weak. Thorne looked at the image of the Council orbital, a delicate ring of gossamer metal and gardens floating serenely. He thought of the history reports his own xenologist had prepared on the Council. A 10,000-year peace, no record of systemic betrayal, a culture that valued consensus above all. He also thought of the confused, beautiful shield wall they had thrown up. It wasn't a weapon. It was a plea. They're scared of the monument, Vance, Thorne said, removing his command cap. Maybe it's time they met the mind that built it. Prepare a cutter. I'm going over. The Council shuttle was a bubble of transparent crystal and singing metals, so fragile Thorne felt he might break it by breathing too heavily. As it detached from the Unbreakable's vast, armored flank, the contrast was absolute. He was leaving the embodiment of human defiance, entering a vessel that was a piece of art. The journey to the Council orbital was silent, the Baralan pilot tense, throwing nervous glances at the human admiral in his simple, unadorned uniform. Docking was a soft chime, not a metallic clang. The air that washed and was perfumed, ionized, and alive with a subtle, harmonic hum. Thorne stepped out into a garden. The docking bay was a biome of floating flora and gentle light. Waiting for him was a delegation. Ambassador Kalen, the Celcom Minister Alara in a mobile fluid harness, the Baralan Defense Coordinator, and the Ren Archcounselor. The sight of Thorne, alone, unarmed, and so ordinary, was its own shock. He was not a giant, not a fire-eyed demon. He was a tired-looking man with a stern face and calm eyes. But his posture was straight, his gaze direct, taking in every detail of the opulent vulnerability around him. Admiral Thorne, Kalen began, his harmonics straining for warmth. Welcome. Your trust is noted. Thorn gave a single, slight nod. Your architecture is impressive. It speaks of confidence. The statement hung in the air, a mirror held up to their own fear. They led him to the council chamber, a vast sphere with a central walkway. Around them, in floating tiers, were the assembled species of the galaxy. Their murmurs a symphony of anxious clicks, whistles, and chimes. The air was thick with tension and alien scent. The Ren Arch-Counselor initiated the dialogue. Admiral, we have analyzed your historical broadcasts. We must ask why. Why does a species with such creative brilliance, such capacity for art and science, choose to present itself to the cosmos in that? A hologram of the unbreakable bloomed in the chamber's center, a monstrous scar against the beauty. All eyes were on Thorn. He did not look at the hologram. He looked at the assembled aliens. You see a warship, Thorn said, his voice carrying without amplification in the acoustically perfect room. We see a history book. Every scar on that hull is a lesson paid from blood. Every weapon is an answer to a question the universe asked us with violence. He paused, letting the translators work. You have had 10,000 years of peace. Humanity has had 10,000 years of war. With each other, with our planet, with our own nature. Peace, for us, is not a default state. It is a fragile, precious, engineered achievement. The unbreakable is not a threat. It is our insurance policy. The Baralan snorted. Insurance against us? Against everything, Thorn replied, his gaze sweeping the room. You look at the void and see a community to join. We looked at the same void and saw cold, emptiness, and potential threats. Our first contact with an alien intelligence, before we met you, was an automated berserker probe from a long-dead machine civilization. It attempted to sterilize our homeworld. We defeated it. Barely. That was the day we learned the universe is not a song. It is a conversation. And sometimes the other party shouts. A stunned silence met his words. The berserker probe event was in no archive. It was a private, galactic horror they had never known. The unbreakable, Thorn continued, is our voice in that conversation. It says, we are here. We will not be easily removed. We wish to speak, but we can shout back. You built shields of light to show unity. We build armor and guns because our history tells us that sometimes the light goes out and you're left alone in the dark with whatever put it out. We do not assume malice from you, but we cannot assume safety from a universe we are still learning. The Celcom minister, Elara, found her voice. So you carry your darkness with you. Always? You bring your war potential to our doorstep as an introduction. Thorn finally looked at the hologram of his ship, his expression unreadable. We carry our lessons. This ship is the reason I could stand here, unarmed, in your most sacred place, and know I will be safe. Not because of your goodwill, but because my crew on that ship ensures it. It is the foundation that allows for this fragility. He gestured to the garden chamber. You have built a paradise on the assumption that no one would break it. We admire that. We envy it. But we come from a harder school. We offer you our strength, not to dominate you, but to join you, to be the ones who stand at the gate, so you can tend your gardens in peace. The concept was revolutionary, alien to their philosophy, a species that sought to protect through deterrence, to use its monstrous capability as a shield for others, not a sword against them. The Ren Arch-Counselor leaned forward, his facets catching the light. You offer to be our guardians? Based on a distrust of a universe we do not share. We offer to be your partners, Thorn corrected, to bring a perspective you lack. You have perfected the art of peace. We have, through bitter necessity, mastered the science of survival. Together, perhaps, we can build something more resilient than peace. We can build a guarantee. The panic in the chamber had not vanished, but it had morphed. It was no longer the fear of a predator. It was the dizzying, terrifying vertigo of a paradigm shift. They were not looking at a barbarian at the gate. They were looking at a hardened soldier, offering to stand watch so the poets could sleep soundly. It was unsettling, offensive to their ideals, and yet there was a terrible, logical solidity to it. The universe was vast and old. Were 10,000 years of peace proof of its nature, or merely a fortunate interim? The council did not reach a decision that day, but they did not ask Thorne to leave. They began to ask questions, real ones, about the Berserker probe, about human wars, about the cost of their vigilance. The conversation moved from accusation to awkward, painful understanding. As Thorne returned to his Titan, the gaze of the galaxy upon him was changed. The unbreakable was still a terrifying monument. But now, some of those who looked upon it saw not just the weapon, but the warning etched in its steel and the weary, determined guardians standing at its posts. The panic of the council settled into a deep, profound, and necessary anxiety, the first step in growing up as a galaxy from a sheltered childhood into a wiser, harder adulthood. Humanity had not arrived with a song. They had arrived with a shield. And for the first time, the Galactic Council began to wonder if, in the silent, cold depths between the stars, a shield might one day be the only thing that could save a song.